Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am O'Brien McMahon, and this is People Business. In this episode, I'm joined by Dr. Anna Stumpf. Anna is a dynamic coach and consultant transitioning from a rich background in HR and academia, where she taught college-level marketing and branding classes, where she specializes in career, academic, and emotional intelligence coaching. With her unique blend of professional experience across diverse sectors and a deep understanding of generational dynamics, Anna offers a holistic approach to coaching. Her work is characterized by a strong focus on authentic connections, adaptability, and impactful change. Anna's passions lie in empowering individuals and teams to discover their full potential and navigate the complexities of modern professional environments. And this was a pretty wide-ranging conversation. It's not all about her coaching work. It's actually a lot about her prior teaching work and her expertise in marketing and branding. And she has a couple really insightful things that she points out right in the beginning. The one I'll direct you to is the conversation we have around marketing today largely as community building. And I'll just tease you with that. We talk a lot about what that means, how individuals and organizations can apply that in the different ways it applies. There's a ton in here that I'm going to go back and listen to and apply to my work. I think there's a ton that leaders, that teams, that just individuals who want to improve the way they're perceived in the world, that all of you can take from this conversation. It's always a blast to talk with Anna. She is all about energy, so much that she put it in the name of her business, Collective Energy Coaching. So without further ado, here she is, Dr. Anna Stumpf. Anna, welcome to the show. Excited to have you on today. You graciously hosted me on your show just a little while back, and we had a great conversation. Even after we hung up, we were talking about all kinds of stuff that you're working on. And I was like, let's hit pause on this and bring you on People Business to unpack a little bit of the work that you have done and are focused on now. You and I have known each other for a couple years at this point, connected through Dr. Ray Sylvester, who has also been a guest on this show. Shout out to Dr. Ray, who's awesome. We did an awesome episode on personal branding for anybody who's interested in that. And welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here. I always love talking to you, so this is like a treat.
You're a personal ego boost for me. I love your energy, and you're always very complimentary, and I appreciate that. So,
well, you deserve it. If anything, I'm known as a real talker. So if I say anything that makes you feel good, you have to believe it. You have to buy in.
Well, you better hit me with some criticism when I deserve it too. Then,
okay, I will.
Let's just start at the beginning. Who are you? What's your background, and what are you doing now?
Well, I am a Gen Xer, and I do talk a lot about generations because I was a marketing professor, which we'll get to, and we are the people that invented generations, right? Because we needed to sell stuff. So we're very passionate about generations. I'm very passionate about them because I spent a lot of time with different generations. But I am a first-generation college student from a little town in Missouri, had the love of two boomer parents who didn't work hard their whole life to send me to school, for this or this or this or this. And one of those things was I came home my junior year of high school and wanted to be a teacher. My dad was like, absolutely not. Like, I didn't work hard my whole life for that. So I went to college at a state school, and I've traversed my way through that. I went out by myself to the college visit, the tour. Other people had their parents. I was like, what's that? What are they doing? I was an only child, just scrappy. Parents were both entrepreneurs, but with their limited education, just hardworking people. Majored in management because, did you hear the recipe? I have parents who own businesses. I'm an only child. I was born to boss people around. So I was let's go.
Type A as it gets. There you go.
I was like, let's go. Well, I didn't know they had weed out classes. I didn't know what that was. It's still just a ridiculous concept, but the first management class, and back in those dark days, you had to get through all of your general ed credits. So I was a junior before I got to sit in my first business class. And it was awful. It was all 600 pages of scientific theory. And I was like, whoa, this is not what I came for. And it was nearly impossible to change your major back then. But I went and wore my advisor down, and he was like, you need to be a marketing major. And I loved it, loved everything about it. That was back, pre-internet. So I used to have to go to the career center, sign up on the paper on the wall to interview with companies when they came to campus. And I interviewed with like Tire Barn. I interviewed with companies you never heard of. But here came Walmart. We lived right in the like heyday of Walmart. Like Sam Walton's brother had a Ben Franklin store in my hometown. So like everybody was like Walmart crazy. So that's who I ended up going to work for. My dad probably did not have a happier day until his grandson was born that I went to work for the world's largest company. So went into their training and development program. Fast forward 10 years with Walmart, 6 states, 13 addresses. The two best years at Walmart, training and development. I was teaching. I got to write curriculum. I wrote the first class that Walmart had in probably like 12 years. I pitched it and they were like, nobody's ever going to let you do that. We haven't had a new class forever. I got to write a new class. I loved everything about it. But they only let you do that 2 years because they want you to get back out into the field. Like they don't want you to get too detached from like the brutal reality of retail, discount retail at that. So I met my husband at Walmart one day. So I always tell people, if you go to Target and you leave with a bunch of stuff that's not on your list, I will forever have you beat. I got my husband at Walmart. And so, I met my husband at Walmart and knew we couldn't both be in retail management and have the quality of life we wanted to have. And I asked for a different transfer, like to a different division. They said, well, you can move here, Indianapolis. So I asked my husband, like, what do you think? And he's like, oh, sports town, let's go to Indy. It was closer to both of our families anyway. So in the mountains, driving from like Virginia to Indiana, I did that thing you do when you're listening to like bad 90s CDs, eating beef jerky and Sour Patch Kids. Like, if money didn't matter, what would you do? And he was like, oh, I'd be a teacher. So there we go. We come back, we get married, we buy a house, we settle down, we both go back to school and become teachers. My husband has taught 7th grade social studies in the same classroom for 17 years, 6 periods a day, same lesson. He coaches junior high sports. He does all those things. I, on the other hand, have been on a different path. And I think there's this common phrase now that Gen Xers are in their 3rd phase. Honestly, I'm probably quadrupled that by now. I started teaching high school business classes and quickly realized that I was the internet police for a bunch of sophomores in high school, teaching outdated versions of like Microsoft Office. It was not good. And you constantly I was teaching business classes, so they were an elective. And you constantly had to worry about enrollment, and you weren't a state tested subject and that kind of stuff. So I ended up going back to school and got an MBA so I could teach at the college level, and started teaching at the university level, different marketing, social media marketing, sports marketing, personal brand, taught at the MBA level, taught in another graduate program. Eventually got super frustrated with higher ed for a lot of reasons. That's a whole different podcast episode. And decided to roll back out into corporate America. Major lesson that I had been learning along the way is nobody in higher ed ever cared what I did in the business world. They just cared, where were your credentials from? What have you published? Like the academic piece. And nobody in the business world really cares what you did in higher ed.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I was in this weird, like very experienced, but very low transferability between those two entities. So I kind of kept my foot in both places as much as I could with networking and trying to get my students to network and modeling networking and doing field trips and doing experiential learning and bringing people into the classroom and doing all of those things that never happened for me to help me understand what I wanted to do, especially like teaching at the high school level and realizing what that looks like. And so standardized and so linear and pathways. And we just pulled the exploration out of that. But yeah, so I left higher ed and went into HR and spent a year and a half at an accounting firm doing training and development. So let's just parse that apart. I was not training or developing CPAs because they get that stuff elsewhere. I was actually doing a lot of coaching, and a lot of trying to build trust and develop people who could give feedback and collaboration and communication and emotional intelligence and all of those things. And then it finally hit me that I could really benefit more people if I wasn't in one organization and a culture that is so responsive to the environment and to trends and, just the enrollment cliff and everything else that I was experiencing in higher ed has hit the industries. And it's the same problem over and over again. So I decided in February on Valentine's Day that I was no longer, for 32 years, no longer going to be anybody's employee. I stepped out on my own and I have my own coaching business.
There is a lot to unpack there.
It is a lot.
Yeah.
I've been busy.
So let's talk about the marketing and communication stuff that you did, both for businesses and for individuals around personal branding. I know you talk a lot now around emotional intelligence. Can you talk to the importance or power of emotional intelligence when it comes to thinking about marketing and messaging?
Oh, well, I mean, I think my two favorite topics in college outside of marketing were always psychology and sociology, because it's the study of people. And I think when you think about what emotional intelligence really is, and that is having the awareness and the ability to understand how your emotions enter into everything, conversations, your own thoughts, stress and anxiety, resilience, impulse control, all of your relationships, all of your decisions. Well, as a marketer, what we're trying to figure out is a good customer journey, good customer experience, getting awareness in the most chaotic, crowded place, on people's devices, on, any of that, trying to get their attention and relate to them. And really what marketing has become, if it's done well in the last few years, is building community. And I think my biggest example, two best examples this year, I'll say three. I did a whole keynote on this. I'm very passionate about it because I've become a late in life Swiftie. I do not think you will find people that build community better and also saved us from a recession in the last 365 days than Barbie, Beyonce, and Taylor Swift. And you look at, we'll start with Taylor Swift, the storytelling, the relatability, the emotions for young people who have grown up with her, people my age who've stumbled upon her and resonate so well. The, what does she call them? The dads, Brads, and Chads have come, like the relatability and the community that she built to the point that people are going to concerts with friendship bracelets, right? They're the lyrics, the songs, the Easter eggs, the things that she does, the nuances of building community where these people are really truly being marketed to by definition, but they feel a part of something to the point they're called Swifties and she's trademarked that name, right? I mean, but she's a person that everyone feels good about looking towards. She's a person that does good. I mean, just there's a lot to that. Yeah. Beyonce, much the same. Another just record-setting tour, people wearing certain outfits, being in the middle of a certain song and like running around the stadium before the concert to make sure people who are kind of new to the community know the nuances of during this song, we all get really quiet for an 8 count, and practicing with people and holding things up on their cell phone so everybody knows what's about to happen. So they're part of the community around the storytelling. And for Beyonce, like with this country album, it's the history and what she's like, she's just so much intention in that. And then I happened to be in Europe this summer when the Barbie movie hit. It was not that big a deal in Europe. I mean, there were some movie posters and there were some things, but I get on TikTok at night or on social media and I'm watching people just in mass dressed in pink going to the movies over. And so there's the nostalgia piece and the way that story was told. And there's just so much of that is what marketing is. And that storytelling and the community, all of that. And again, it's all wrapped up in emotional intelligence.
Has marketing always been community? Like, has that always been the goal of marketing? Or is that something that's evolved recently for a certain reason.
No, I mean, if you go back and you look at the eras of marketing, and it follows sort of production, right? Like we used to, at the very beginning, we only had one product, right? You had a television, you had the Model T. You couldn't even get the Model T in different colors.
Yeah.
Like, here's the product. If you want it, come buy it.
Yeah. That was Henry Ford's. They can have any color they want as long as it's black.
As long as it's black.
Yeah.
I mean, there was no marketing. It was just trying to convince people that you need to replace your radio with this big, giant 4-ton, screen.
Yeah.
And it's probably going to only get one show a day or something. At that time, there wasn't programming. So we moved from like products and production era into a little bit more sales because we ramped up production and we were able to have more than just one model of car, one color of car, one size of television. And then we had to have a salesperson who had to greet you when you came in. And there was a little bit of relationship there, but for the most part, that was probably like psychological selling and whatever that was. Then I think this is where we got a little like off kilter with kind of being pushed as marketers into the tech, right? Because then we had e-commerce and we were doing a lot of those touch points and a lot of those things. And we really weren't very good at that. And here came social media. And we really weren't very good at that. And now we're into like a different era. Like we're constantly just kind of being pushed along. But what I used to tell my students was in 1993, I learned the basic foundation and fundamentals of marketing, right? The 4 Ps and all those traditional things we all learned. They are kind of the same as the marketing I'm teaching later, 25 years later. It's just such a different application.
Yeah.
And the more levers we have to pull and the more things we have to do. And now the more data we have, because now we're really driving down into like a personalized experience. So yeah, there has been like shades of some of that through the evolution of marketing and branding, but it's definitely becoming more important.
Yeah. Well, you talk about the Ford example. My father owns a Ford dealership and has for a long time. He was episode 100 on this show. We talked about his career and owning a small business. But you talk about the Model T, they can have any color as long as it's black. 2 years ago, I bought a Ford Bronco and went out as part of that. You had the opportunity to go out and do the Bronco off-rodeo driving school. They've got 4 of these set up around the country. And I got to bring a friend to it. And we learned to use the Broncos to go off-roading because their whole thing is they want to build community of off-roaders to actually teach people how to go out and get into nature. And it's all about the community building. And we sat around a campfire at the end of the day and people are talking about how they customize their Broncos or where they're going with their Broncos, all this kind of stuff. To go from they can have anything as long as it's black to just this one model has its own cult and community is a totally drastic change. You can see that shift happen just in that one brand.
Well, and the interesting part of your story is that was by Ford. They sponsored that.
Yeah.
Think of that's okay. So that's brand centric. The brand is extending into that to build community. In a world where we have influencers and we have all of these, think of the communities being built that don't directly involve the brand.
Yeah.
And if they're paying attention and they can lean into that, that's great. But that paying attention part on behalf of a brand, they've been pushing messages and pushing content and pushing programming and pushing products for so long. They're not good at the other direction of listening and paying attention. A few years ago, I attended Social Media Marketing World in San Diego. It's one of my favorite conferences for social media. And the gentleman who helped Yeti embrace all of the user-generated content that was being used, like they were not paying attention. And he came in as a consultant and started showing them, if you just search on Instagram for people using your name, and they were like, well, we have a hashtag. We checked the hashtag. And he's like, I hate to tell you, people don't care about your hashtag.
Yeah.
But the one thing he showed the like team at Yeti was a gentleman parked his car at the airport in Phoenix, Arizona, had like an iced drink or whatever in his Yeti, forgot it in his car, flew out for 2 days, came back, there was still ice in it.
Yeah.
And he was like, I don't know what you all can come up with in this headquarters that is more compelling to somebody to pay $40 for your product than that guy.
Wasn't that?
Why are you not?
That's just what happened with the Stanley mugs. The woman whose car caught on fire, and the only thing that was still like usable in the
Still
car
there.
was the Stanley mug, and so Stanley bought her a new car. Like,
but when I
brilliant.
tell you how slow brands were to social listening in the last 10 years, they had all, but they sit and think, what am I going to say next? Which, allow me, fellow podcaster, to make a segue for you. It's the same emotional intelligence deficiencies we have in leadership and corporate America. I'm listening to respond. I've got my point to make. There's low trust, so let me just talk more to fill that. It's the same thing. We see emotional intelligence show up in all these ways.
Well, let me ask you about a specific part of the corporate world, which is recruiting. Because that is a form of sales, branding, marketing, right? And as you were talking, I was thinking, like, man, this is translatable to what some successful companies are doing right now, creating their workplace as a community, and not as like, oh, we're all family here, but actually finding ways to tell their story to attract people, to make them a destination because it's cool to work there, or it's fun to work there, or there's other intrinsic reasons that people would want to come and work for a company like that.
Yeah.
What have you seen as far as companies doing that well?
Well, so as a professor, I used to try and get my students to understand you need to interview the company just as hard as they're interviewing you.
Yeah.
Which was never a message they were given. So they all side-eyed me like, why are you the only one saying that? Because the rest of the world and media and my parents have told me how lucky I'm going to be to find a job.
Yeah.
And, those are all messages for sure. But my point was always, you need to comb over all of the social media, all of the employees that are sharing about what you're talking about. What is it like to work there? What work do you do? How happy are you? How, like all the things that they say on their careers page that they're about. Those are artifacts, right? Find artifacts, find the stories. And then when you get to your interview, start to ask the same question of everyone you talk to and make sure you're getting the same answers. Because I think a lot of people out there would admit someone that doesn't even work for the company almost often, I shouldn't say almost always, but often will be the creator of the content on the careers page.
Yeah.
It's not even the internal comms people always. So that's another piece of marketing. It's another place where user-generated content is going to sell so much more. When I first started research for my dissertation, I really, truly wanted to do, and it was when Twitter was big. I was super into Twitter. I was a very big Twitter girl. A lot of successful relationships in my life, friendships, professional friendships, everything started on Twitter. The thing I could never figure out is why did teams not leverage athletes more to sell tickets and swag when the athletes always had more followers?
Yeah.
Now, granted, they would have to pay them. And I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that they're sold back and forth like, commodities. So it was probably very reluctant for some players to care about your ticket sales when you could be gone in a couple of seasons or whatever. It was interesting to me, like, why they never did that. But then as I started to think more about employer branding, I think, why do we not do more of the employee experience that aligns with the customer experience? Because you really want to wow a customer to the point. And there's been books written by this. Jay Baer wrote a couple of great books around like the wow effect. Like the guy who gets on the plane and tweets like, I'm going back to whatever city and I can't wait to sink my teeth into blah, blah, blah steak, right? And then as the man deplanes, comes down the gangplank, there stands somebody from the restaurant holding a warm steak dinner for him because they saw it on Twitter, and he shared it. The world shared it. Like we're cultivating all of these amazing experiences for our customers. Like, what are we doing for our employees? And what does it say when an employee is hesitant to align their personal brand or their social media to your corporate brand? And that's not always on the company. It's not always indicative of a poor employment experience. I mean, there's a couple of companies out there that will actually like curate the content and put it out where an employee can pull it and just copy and paste it. I mean, there's ways of doing all of that. But yeah, to your point, I don't know. I think it's gotten as messy and crowded and chaotic as everything else on your social feeds. And for it to be incredibly genuine and everything else, I think like, and I'm super biased, but I think it has to be the experience that people have. So when you look at recruiters, how long after I applied did I hear from somebody? Did I get a response? Like, it's just that whole process and whole system. And I have to tell you, if there is a group of people right now that my heart hurts for, it's people in talent acquisition in 2024. I used to tell students up until about 6 or 8 months ago, right, that were college students getting ready to graduate, like, stop mass applying for jobs. You have to do really good research on the job description and make sure you fine tooth comb your resume to match that job description. Don't put things on your resume that don't match the job and won't align well. I used to have all these great applicant tracking stories. Like, I'd go through the whole thing. The minute ChatGPT went public, everybody has the hack to get into the top 10%. I mean, it's absolutely, and those systems, those HRIS systems, those things were not prepared for this.
Yeah.
And HR is overtaxed, overworked, over everything except overtech, right? Like, they're not ready for this.
Yeah, not
and
overtech.
They are just absolutely so far. And so that little nuance of reaching out, sending the sorry, we got your resume, but we went a different direction. All of those things are so backlogged and so far behind. So you have people that feel like they're getting ghosted and didn't have a good experience. And right now, in this like ultra consumerism world, especially with Gen Z, right? What's about to be our biggest global portion of the workforce, they are very much about authenticity and do what you say and say what you do and be who you are. And if you get ghosted as a Gen Z these days, they probably won't shop with you.
Yeah.
It's going to be pretty massive.
Well, we're seeing that even in our business. I'm in a consulting business and we help companies with their benefits programs, among other total rewards, but let's just focus on benefits for a second. I mean, we're having conversations in our business where for many years, part of what we would do is kind of educate people on what's going on in the market. Here's what different generations are looking for. Here's what different trends we're seeing across industries. And some of that stuff is still relevant, but we're seeing more clients challenge that stuff now and say like, okay, great. I don't care that Gen X likes this. What do I need to do for my people? It's not the authenticity as much as it's like the experience, right? Like, tailor the experience for me. I don't need the fluff. I don't need all the extra. I just need the genuine. I need to genuinely know that you've thought about my business to a really deep level. And
can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Does anybody ever show up and slide a sheet of paper across the table to you and say, I've talked to all of my people and here's what they want?
No. No,
Why do
we do some of that work. I mean, we can help them do some of that work,
right?
Like
but
surveys.
That's
and stuff.
Always blown my mind. Like, as a consultant, that when people show up and have a problem, they're very stuck on this is the problem, and 9 times out of 10, that's not actually the problem.
Well, in fact, you're about to open a whole can of worms.
We might have to do multi-part series. We can get into like that's a whole episode.
Yeah, I've been thinking about this a lot in my work and outside. Go there in a second, but in our work, I actually hear a lot, we don't want to burden our people with surveys. And I get the sentiment of like, we don't just want to ask arbitrary things all the time, but the importance of that discovery phase and of defining what the real problems are. I can't do it right this second because I'm quite busy, but there's a part of, I've like filed it away that I'm like, we need to think about what that looks like, because I'm buying more and more into thinking about our business as a design process. We've thought about it as a renewal process because benefits plans renew, but I've more and more I'm thinking about it as a design process. And we are actually, shameless plug for any heads of HR listening, we're actually hosting an event, 2-day event in Chicago to teach heads of HR design in June of 2024.
I know, I saw that.
Yeah. So I have been
amazing.
deep down the design.
So can I give you what I think my hot tip is on this? We don't want to burden our people with surveys.
Please.
And I tell you this as a parent. This is anecdotal, my personal experience. This is not Professor Anna or in any of my like professional brain. The amount of surveys I fill out for our school district that they just do the opposite. They come out and say 85% of you want a 1-week spring break and a week at Thanksgiving. So we're going to give you a 2-week spring break and we're going to make Thanksgiving break 2 days.
Yeah.
Like you just said, the majority of people want this, but you're going to do this other thing anyway.
Yeah.
It's the fatigue of filling out the survey and then not having it utilized
100%.
or listened to or responded to. Yeah, that
100%.
is the thing. So then there's complaints. And as leaders, again, we go back to emotional intelligence. They hear the like, oh, people are tired of surveys. Or it's the, well, if I survey them, I better read it and listen and respond, right? It's They don't want to take on that added responsibility.
Well, in some way, I may get in trouble for saying this, but in some way, the way that they are asking us to really tailor our service to them, their employees are asking them to really tailor their service and benefits and experience to the employees. And I don't see, this might be controversial, I don't see them responding the same way that they are demanding us to respond. Not that they're not doing it at all.
I think
but
you just hit the nail on the head of what is about to become the biggest societal issue that we have.
I agree, which is why we're doing this conference.
AI,
yeah,
right?
I think it's
AI
a huge
and
issue.
Everything is going to be individualized. So I'm going to have my own. This is the thing I worry about and why I talk all around the country all the time on networking and relationships and blind spots and how you really cannot fully know yourself unless you're spending time with other people. Like very quality, inquisitive, meaningful time with other people, because that's how you really get to know yourself. And what I see happening, and I mean, which really poor timing of a global pandemic along with AI, is I see this individualization becoming just the flex that everybody really truly wants.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's funny, like your show notes, your interview form, you like ask a question in there about like, what should corporate America do to make learning and development better? Well, my number one answer is to customize it for the individual.
Yeah.
That's our answer for everything. That's what I think needs to happen in K-12. That's what I think needs to happen in higher ed. That's what needs to happen in corporate learning development. But it's also maybe going to be one of the most detrimental things to us as people. So, I mean, it's like a hard place right now for sure.
I think it's also one of the reasons, in addition to social media, and the news cycle, which gets blamed a lot for the growing tension in the country between sides. I think there's also like both sides tension has gone up. I think there's also this element of like, we all know that we want less BS in the world. We all know we want less arbitrary policy and rules and like stifling people from being happy, healthy individuals. And yet all this, like all of our lingering infrastructure is set up on these kind of arbitrary, one committee of very like-minded people chose how everybody was going to have to do this thing. And I think we are all chafing at that right now.
We certainly are. And while you were talking, I was thinking about like the algorithm. I mean, I love my algorithm. I'm especially like on LinkedIn. I've curated such a great algorithm. The problem is it's my algorithm. It's not really reality. Mm-hmm. And I've had to go out and like purposely find newsletters and news sources that do both sides, because that's not what you're getting.
Yeah.
And I'm always reminded, like if I grab somebody else's phone, or like my son opened up TikTok on my iPad the other day and was like, what is this? And I was like, yeah, like a 52-year-old's TikTok doesn't look like yours for a lot of reasons. But I mean, it's just, we're getting such individualized and reinforceable exposure to news and information and things that it's just perpetuating a lot of that.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Let's circle back to the corporate side of this and talk specifically to leaders for a second, because we kind of talked about sort of the recruiting function, but I think a lot of onus is being put on the leaders of an organization. Maybe it's just the CEO or the executive suite to have their own brands that align with the brands of the business. How are you seeing leaders brand themselves successfully?
I'm seeing more of the hesitation because of like quote unquote cancel culture and the misstep of one CEO making a comment or doing something on the golf course or whatever it might be that gets captured, or, signing up for a newsletter or being in the wrong place at the wrong time that becomes like a real problem for the whole organization.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's enough of that gotcha happening that they're very hesitant to develop a good personal brand and put it out. You do see people who are actual thought leaders that share, that are the true head of an organization, that go out and speak and do those things. But those are pretty healthy, mature organizations. Those are unicorns, in my opinion, that are able to go out and do those things because for the most part, we had barely recovered from 2008, right?
Yeah.
Like from that financial destruction. And then we thought, oh, things are finally going well. And then the bottom falls out of like the pandemic and the supply chain. And now we have technology. And, we've been looking at population shifts and just one cultural, punch right after the other that I think it's almost unrealistic to think that a lot of leaders out there today have the bandwidth to put into building a good personal brand. Unfortunately, I don't know that the conversation gets thrown around enough that we all have a personal brand. Are you doing anything with it? Are you controlling it? Like there's that famous Jeff Bezos quote that your personal brand is what people say about you when you aren't in the room. I mean, I would want to have control of that. I have control of it to the point that, like you mentioned at the beginning of the call, I named my coaching business with the word energy in it, right? That is for good, bad, and different. I used to hate that because it was so reductive to me, but that's what I do. That's what I am. That's how I leave people. I'm going to embrace that. And I'm going to own it and I'm going to work it.
Yeah.
I don't know. And looking at like the landscape of business today, with the two things I hear over and over and over again are stress and burnout. And every leader that says my people are suffering from stress and burnout, I was like, can you describe to me what those two words mean to you? I've yet to meet anybody that has the same definition.
Yeah.
Or where they think it's coming from. They all think it's coming from like overwork or over this or over that. It's really not. So I think that when you think about like adding to the plate of a leader, cultivating their personal brand, and putting things out there feels like another layer of risk management they just don't have the bandwidth for.
Yeah. I just published an episode on workaholism. And what she really talks about...
I've been too busy to listen to it, but I'm going to.
Well, it's only been out a week, so not even. The thing that really resonated with me in that conversation is she talks about it's not how many hours you work that makes you a workaholic or leads to stress and burnout. It can be. It could be just a volume thing. But for most people, it's not the hours worked. It's how tight you're clenched when you're not working.
Yeah.
Are you thinking about work? Are you ruminating on work? Are you stressed that you should be getting back to work? Are you thinking about your to-do list? Are you checking your emails while you're on personal time? It's all that stuff. It's that stress and anxiety about needing to feel productive all the time that is burning people out. And that resonated with me for sure.
Oh, 100%. I'm looking for a quote. I actually saw this on LinkedIn and I saved it and I read it to my managing partner when I resigned because it was like hit home so hard. And I just wanted him to have this. And I'm not sure, I have not fact checked this, but the person who posted it said it was Napoleon, and I can't find it because I'll have to just paraphrase it. But it was a Napoleon quote that said, a lack of energy is always going to lead to death, right? It's going to be the end of you if you don't have energy. And your lack of energy comes from spending time doing things that are so far below what you are capable of doing. That hit me hard, because how is like the just routine basic thing and the work that is below you that doesn't let you get in your zone of genius or be creative or stretch you or grow you, or not, it's not strategic enough, to think that that causes stress and burnout, because it should just be second nature kind of. It does. It absolutely does. And I would agree with that. Like stressed and clenched and all of those things kind of all come together.
That's interesting, but I do want to hang on this personal brand thing for a second, because it's popped into my head a couple times as we've been talking around. When we talk about the recruiting team, building community and marketing and branding. It also, when you mentioned that individual leaders often don't have the time or the bandwidth to really put into creating their personal brand. One, how important is this really to have a personal brand? Like, is it important for everybody to have a personal brand? And then two, where does somebody start amidst all the noise today? What are the basic skeletons of this that we should be hanging our brand on?
Okay, so this is where we should have Ray Sylvester back on, because there are the cliche overused personal brand definition of like your packaging, right? Your persona, what you put out. It's not actually, and as an emotional intelligence coach and having been friends with Ray, who wrote his dissertation and is literally a global expert on the topic, he will tell you it is your value system. It is, how you spend your time. It's all of these things that you carry within and what you're known for because of your consistency and your interactions with people and all of that. So I think the reason I would say it's that when I say they don't have the bandwidth and they aren't doing that, it is not about like creating LinkedIn posts and having good graphics and all of those things. It's really having a true sense of yourself, your self-awareness and what you stand for. It's understanding your place in the world, your the way you are as a leader, and that we go back to that community piece. Really, for a corporate company to have a brand, it should be cultivated from the community of the company, and that all starts at the top. When I think about what values and the way people interact within an organization, they are either doing that as a mirrored reflection of what they see the leadership doing because they think that's success. If there's a lack of trust from the top down, they cultivate that at every level. I mean, it's one of those things where I think that for a leader to have a personal brand, it is going to have to be very emotionally intelligent, very much self-aware, and very much consistent in the values that drives them. And I know there's probably leaders out there thinking, well, I'm very self-aware and I have great values and we are a great place to work and we're this and we're this and we're this. But I mean, if you go in and spend a day and you watch it, there's evidence otherwise in a lot of instances, and saying something doesn't make it a thing, right? That doesn't, it's in the practice. It's in what you're known for. And that's why, like I always go back to that Bezos quote. Like, what do people say about you when you're not in the room? Do people want to work with you? And why? And is that consistent over time? Does that outlast every trend? Does that translate into how we do, return to office or pandemic or when sales are down? Like, are all of those things very consistent? I can trust you over time to show up in the same way.
Yeah. I say this all the time. I don't know where I heard it, but I believe it to be true, that we build stronger impressions of people based on frequency than we do on severity. So if I go out and golf with somebody for 4.5 hours, I have a decent impression of kind of who they are. But if I go out, you take those 4.5 hours and you break it down into 9 half-hour conversations over a 6-month period, I now have a much stronger impression of who you are because I've seen consistency over a period of time or inconsistency over a period of time. We all know those people that they show up different every time and you can't trust those people. Or the people who show up and they're rock solid, or those people who show up and they're jerks all the time. That it's that frequency that creates the impression. And if I'm hearing you correctly, that's basically what becomes your personal brand. It's what are you demonstrating on a recurring basis over and over again? Is it consistency? Is it inconsistency? Is it a positive experience? Is it a negative experience? Do people feel good or bad? Like, what are you setting on a consistent overtime basis?
And I probably misaligned my comment when I said like they don't have time or they don't trust, because I do make it sound like they're trying to like put out content. But I will take this the way I explain it in a college classroom. And I just did this a couple of weeks ago in San Diego, and it's fresh in my mind. And I asked the students, like, if I gave you money and I needed you to go on Amazon and find me security cameras for my house, and I did a screenshot, right? I just did a search on Amazon for security cameras. The top row of them all had 4.5 stars, all looked basically the same. And I said to the students, which one are you buying? 100% of the kids in the room said the second one. I was like, why? Well, it's got the most user reviews. Yep. You can't trust the 4.5 stars if only 30 people said it. Yep. This one had like 26,000. So I click on it. I'm looking. I was like, let's think for a minute. How is that different? How, as consumers, are we different than employers or colleagues or, friends? We trust other people almost instantly when we're introduced to them, or when we can read other people's experiences with them, right? Like, that stuff matters. And I think there's this thing going on right now on TikTok. Everybody's up in arms because Glassdoor has removed the anonymity, where people were like leaving comments about their employer, but they did it anonymously, and they've removed that, and people are just losing their minds. And I'm thinking, that seems to be a fair ask. If you're going to say something, like, it should be a reflection of your personal brand, of what you would say about another brand. Yeah. I mean, Nike doesn't get to run around and say bad things about Adidas under a given, a pseudonym. But I mean, like, can you imagine? And I've had a couple of these in my career. Leaders that when the person's name is mentioned, everybody that knows them gets that same visceral reaction of like, oh, yeah. And they all have a story and everything aligns. I guarantee you that person has cultivated trust through those consistency and everything that you're talking about in the right way. And do you think that makes them infallible? Do you think they've never made a mistake? Absolutely. We all make them every day. It's how you respond and react and own it and grow. And those are the things that I think I've done so much studying lately on, especially in professional services, because that's where I spend a good deal of my time coaching. What makes you successful in certain industries is just churning out work. It has nothing to do with people. I mean, you may have to share the work and you may be on a team here and there, but for the most part, you are an individual contributor. And through the calendar and your just relentless dedication to results, you get to be into a leadership position. Yep. Well, when's the last time anybody helped that person know how to lead people? Yeah. And that's kind of, to me, where the wheels fall off of the whole thing. I talk about that in my business all the time, because on the account side, so I'm on the production sales side, and I work with my clients, but we have teams that are working with them really on a day-to-day basis. And in order to get through the first probably 70% or 60% of your career on that side, it's just how much technical knowledge can you learn and how much of that work, how much work can you get done? Because there's so much to learn in what we do that it's just, you're more useful the more knowledge you have, and you can do more things. And simultaneously, you're having more interactions with more stakeholders. Yes. Right? You have to work for people, you have to work with people, you have to work, people in the office that are maybe under you, and then you have clients. Yeah. Well, you're getting some more interaction as you grow, but the main, like, what gets rewarded is technical knowledge. Right. Then you flip over at some point to a different role,
And the last 30 or 35% of the growth is how do you take that knowledge and apply it to the person that you're sitting in the room with? And that's really what becomes important, is how you're able to use it for different coalitions of people, different individuals, even in the same room who have different goals. How can you cultivate that experience for them with your knowledge? And it's a very tough transition for people to go through. And you can see them when they are starting to make that, you can see them just want to go back to, well, no, but here's my technical knowledge. And you really have to force them to get uncomfortable again. They just, it's like going from high school sports to college sports. Like, you're the best kid on your high school varsity team, and then you go to a college D1 program and you ride the bench for a year or two. It's like the same kind of thing. You got to go back to the beginning and build those other skills. And I think that happens a lot, and we don't realize that we have to make that transition and invest in that new skill set.
Yeah. And then you get some of these industries. I'm going to give you my personal ick. I had an epiphany about 6 months ago. One of the most toxic things being a non-traditional academic in higher ed was the tenured professor who got to where they got, not because they were phenomenal in the classroom, not because they paid attention to the industry and the businesses and they brought people in their classroom. They literally just took the legal pad they used to read from, had the department, secretary, I'm using quotes because that's what they were called at the time, type all of those word for word in a PowerPoint, and have been like just standing up front banging on that thing for years. And then when like Canvas and Blackboard and these learning management systems came, they uploaded those PowerPoint files and they're like, now I teach online. Just, very much tone deaf to like what's going on in the world, because doing what I've always done type of thing. And the luxury of that being able, you're not evaluated, you're guaranteed employment. Like, that used to just drive me crazy. And I'd be out here like bringing in guest speakers and trying to do all this great stuff, trying to give students a glimpse of like what it would be like to do this job. That the first thing we asked you on your orientation day when you just got out of high school like 6 weeks ago is, what do you want to major in?
Yeah.
And then we need to know that so we can put you in a dorm. And then we need, their brains aren't even fully formed. And it's such a broken system. And then I used to just drive me crazy. Then I get to work at this accounting firm, fast forward a few years, and I'm coaching all these people, trying to help them with reality testing, reframing, and advocate for yourself and have this conversation, how to respond. And it dawned on me one day, the partners of this firm are like a tenured faculty. Like, nobody's evaluating them. They're partners for life because they did what we just described. The technical knowledge and the flipping of the calendar every 2 years moved them up through the hierarchy. They were able to go get the loan. They were able to buy in. And for generations, 3 or 4 generations, that ascension, that like golden carrot at the top of like, you're going to get to be a partner someday, was just so attractive to these overachievers that they were just like, let's do it. And now the system, the hierarchy, the old school thinkers don't know what to do with these like quote unquote kids today, because quote unquote nobody wants to work, because they don't want to do that same thing that we all did to get to and I just marvel at that. I'm like, wow, I just went from like one system to the other, and they all are going to get disrupted.
Yeah.
Because they need to be, quite honestly, but there's just not going to be the buy-in on what that looks like.
Yeah.
And I think the other real rub is we've had young students, this is another hot button, right, left topic, I know, but we've had young people in school getting social emotional learning, AKA emotional intelligence, as a subject for a while. And they're emotionally intelligent to the point where they have greater empathy, they pay more attention, they question more things, they do different things. And then they get out into the business world and they look around and they're like, oh, you mean our CEO paid money to go learn how to be empathetic? Like, wait a minute. Like, you're starting to see, just from an emotional intelligence lens, these differences. And that is the other thing. I'm a big networking proponent, but if the one thing I could leave with people, if you are of a certain age, if you're especially a Gen Xer, but a millennial, please go do some reverse mentoring. Go grab you some young little Gen Z person that you have zero apparently in common with, and let that person mentor you. I mean, you can do mentoring both ways, but
Yeah.
be open to the fact that they have so much they can teach you.
Yeah.
Beyond how to work your phone.
I love that. I love that. And I actually just hired somebody on my team. I've never had a team before. It's been me working with our account teams, but I actually hired somebody to work directly with me to help me in my sales. And she's 15 years younger than I am. And already, well, I told her as part of the job description is you need to challenge me. I know what I know and I do what I do, but I'm hiring you because it could be better. And I need you to challenge me on this. And it's been interesting and fun already just in a month of working together to see the different perspectives and be like, oh yeah, she does think about this stuff differently. And there's some stuff, there's a lot of stuff that she doesn't know where I'm able to say, well, hey, here's why we're going to do it this way. But
Right.
there's been more than one time already in the month where she'll say something and I go like, yeah, that's right. That is right. We should change what we're doing.
And the gift that you gave her would be what I would want for any person, regardless their age or their season or stage in life, is just the ability for a leader to say, please speak up. Yeah. Please challenge me. Please participate in the conversation, because that doesn't happen enough. The other thing I will tell you is this is documented. Like I wrote a textbook article this summer about we are dealing with the most overeducated generation that we have ever seen. Mm-hmm. So they were born digital natives. They are overeducated, but they lack experience. The problem is they don't know that. So they have kind of just this false bravado of like, I'm here and I've been asking Google things for my whole life. Like there's got to be a nuance in meeting them where they are and letting them know, like, speak up, but I'm also going to do the thing and I'm going to take a minute to tell you the why about something. Like,
every generation needs to be put in their place a little bit.
Oh,
I mean, everybody
all the
does.
time.
I'm at the early end of the millennials. And so I've heard it about millennials since I got into the workforce about how lazy and entitled and everything we were. And like, I know a lot of people who work really, really hard, but it was just a lot of people needed to like come of age in the workforce. And I think that's true right now as we're seeing Gen Z start to come in, is like, oh, they don't have these skills and they don't have those skills. And it's like, yeah, but like we came in with gaps in our skills. Gen X came in with gaps in their skills. It's just like we have different gaps. And so you just have to, you got to give them a little tough love and show them the ropes. And then listen and get rid of all the arbitrary bullshit that you've been doing that isn't working anymore.
Well, and to understand, we all either repeat or rebel what the generation before us did, right? Like I can trace that back to like my grandmother and every generation, what we side-eyed what the one before us did. And then we're, I'm never doing that, right? Kind of thing. But I mean, we've just never had a situation like with technology and social media and how these young people were formed. And I get very fatigued about I call it shoulding all over them. Like we as parents and teachers and educators and society should all over Gen Z. Yeah. And like they're programmed to say, well, what career? Like you want me to major in this? What jobs will I have? Or I need to get this job or I'm going to chase that job. And I'm just like, we don't even know what jobs are going to be out there in 4 years. Like you can't do that. Yeah. Even though that's what's always been done, right? Yeah. Even though that's how higher ed is built, you cannot do that. And not enough people are having that conversation with them. It's disheartening sometimes, but yeah.
Well, anyone who listens to this show knows that I am a big proponent of following your passions. And I don't say that in like, go find the job that you're most passionate about, but like study things you're passionate about, learn about things you're passionate about. And you never know where you'll be able to apply those things. And so if you just do things you're interested in and learn things on the side that you're interested in, you find that it eventually will apply somewhere. And if it doesn't, you still had a lot of fun learning about stuff because learning and growing is fun.
But the key word that you keep saying in this is the superpower of the future, and that is learn.
Yeah.
If you learn how to learn, you're going to be okay.
Yeah. Well, there you go. If you learn how to learn, you're going to be okay. We will leave it at that.
I got 2 master's degrees and a doctorate to drop that mic.
There you go. I like it. Everybody, go learn how to learn if you don't know already and have some fun doing it. Anna, thank you for coming.
Better yet, go learn from someone else. Don't go learn on the internet. Go learn from another person.
Yes. And teach. Teaching is a great way to learn.
Yes.
Thank you for coming on. Where can people find you if they want more Anna Stumpf in their life or want to talk to you about coaching and any of the stuff that we've talked about?
Much like you, I am all over LinkedIn all the time. So Dr. Anna Stumpf, I'm pretentious enough to put the doctor in front of my name still. Dr. Anna Stumpf on LinkedIn. The name of my coaching business is Collective Energy, but it is collectiveenergycoach.com, and then Collective Energy Coach on all the social handles like LinkedIn as well.
Very good. Well, everybody go engage with Dr. Anna. She is a bundle of energy, and you'll be better for it. Anna, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I had a good time.
Hey folks, one last thing before you go. If you enjoyed the episode, make sure to hit subscribe so you can stay up to date with future guests. That's it. Thanks for coming. Go make the most of your business and the people in it.